Hi guys, good evening. Guys, are your colleagues joining as well? Can you check once? Atiksha, Varunendra.
Yes, I don't know why people have not joined it yet. Oh, hello, 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 hello.
Yeah, sorry, didn't catch the last part. They're joining.
So don't know why they have not joined it yet.
It was
I,
there on your schedule, right? Uh,
yeah, it's scheduled. So like this is the only link, no?
yeah, this is the only link. Even I joined through this. I mean, both of you have joined, so I presume that it's the case for everyone as well, right? Should be the
Yeah,
same link.
yeah,
Okay. Let us wait for 5, 6 more minutes and let's
yeah,
see the.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Just if you have any common WhatsApp group or channel of communication with them, you can just drop a
Yeah,
message.
I'll just post in my group,
Ha.
PGT group. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
just drop a
Thank you.
message, please.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yes, sir. I've already informed.
What?
Might be because of it's like Tuesday, so all are working, so might be they must be busy.
But other Tuesdays people join, right? What is so special about this Tuesday?
Yeah, I don't know. Even I'm shocked.
Okay, you can just ask the reason, or you can even let me know. I want to know, okay, how many are joining? Because if less than 50% people join, then might be a bit of a challenge. But let's see. Let's see. Let's wait. And I was planning to cover triggers today. I think your professor has.
Yes, sir. I think because yesterday only we were discussing like we'll sure definitely will join the Tuesday hands-on class because everybody wants to learn. I mean triggers, the normalization and all those things. So let me ask, then I'll get back to you, sir. Wait.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, people are joining. One more Shivam has joined now. So let's see. I'll wait for 5 more minutes as well. No, not a worry.
Actually, sir, the problem is people are not like the links are not visible to their LMS, so that's the issue.
Oh, so how did you guys join?
That's what I'm saying. Like I've joined from the LMS only. It's visible to me, but not to the other students.
Yeah, actually, it's not visible for me also. She has
Uh,
shared the link, that's why I joined.
But it was
oh,
but it was visible for me.
maybe some LMS issue, then technical glitch, I guess.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes, sir. This is a technical glitch.
A link has been shared, they might be joining now.
Okay, okay, sure. Yes. Now we have some sizable portion.
Yeah, hello, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Yash. Yeah, so the link wasn't visible, I heard, in the LMS.
Yes, sir. Actually, it got disappeared. I just messaged and got the link. Now people are like joining in.
Okay, okay. Not to worry. I think we have enough people to get started now. All right. So what has been covered so far in your regular sessions, guys? Can anyone catch me up to speed? What has been going on in your regular sessions? I'm audible, right, everyone? Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, let me know what is going on in your regular session, what has been covered by the professor.
So far, the last class they have covered about the optimization. The last
About
class they have optimization.
optimizer.
Optimization. Yeah. Yes.
Query optimization, sir. Be specific.
What did you guys see in query optimization? What was covered exactly? We are not able to hear you guys. Is anyone speaking?
He was talking about the flow, like how the query goes through the client server, browser, and tree, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Evaluation tree and execution tree, how the flow happens, where it is getting exactly transformed.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that
Any particular optimization tips or things to keep in mind that were discussed?
he was talking about the algorithms involved. He said it's going to be another 2, 3, 4 classes. So he gave just a basic overview of how that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Also, sir, we discuss when we run the SQL command on Postgres. So, like we can get a description of it, like what step-by-step process happened and how did the actual execution query worked as a kind of structure in nodes, like we can say. So that was the point of discussion that also worked around.
Good. Okay. Right. So I think it is a topic in progress then, right? So
Yes.
you guys will get to know more about it. So I'll leave query optimization for a later session. Did you guys discuss anything regarding stored routines, procedures, triggers, anything like that? Any preliminary discussion?
Yeah, views are already covered in our class.
Not views, stored routine, stored.
No, not proceed, not
Uh,
stored procedure and everything. It's still in pending, maybe because I can see it's not covered in the class.
Yeah,
Then
it's pending. SPs are pending. I'm
exactly.
talking about the views.
Got it. Okay. So, right.
Normalization, we can say, Akash sir, that is the key highlighting thing that has been completed from his side, and that is yet to be more discovered from our side, I can say.
Normalization, whatever I taught, that should be good enough for now. You guys don't need to worry about much. Like, keep
Right.
those rules in thumb. From a usability point of view, you really don't have to worry much about it. It's not a major concern. Anyways, if you're using Postgres or SQL Server or anything like that, right? You will have optimizers and normalizers, which will help you basically to normalize your existing data structures or database schema if required, but no need to worry about it too much. Don't give it too much of a thought. It's okay. Focus
Yes.
more on query optimization. There is no real limit to it actually. You can go to great lengths with query optimization. The more optimal your query is, even a single one, the better your performance will be across the board. So query optimization is a really good thing to focus on. Don't worry much about normalization, to be honest. It's okay. If you are just doing the basic things with normalization, it's okay. Some of the times the enterprise grade tools themselves would suggest some common normalizations or denormalization even. So it's okay to not focus your energy much on that. All right.
okay.
Yes, sure.
Hmm. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys or start our discussion on stored routines in SQL. Let me open up the whiteboard. Yeah. So it'll also take us around 2 to 3 sessions to finish up stored routines, because there are many subsections in it. But we'll get a general idea about it, and we'll start with triggers. Then I'll come to stored procedures. Then I'll come to um, stored functions. What are these three things that I have just mentioned? All of them come under the bucket of stored routines. Okay. What is a routine? Now, the word stored means obviously it is saved. Where is it saved exactly? I will show you guys. And why is it called a routine? What do you understand by the word routine? Anyone?
It's executed at scheduled times.
Come again?
It is executed multiple times at a scheduled.
Sir, is it something that is being processed? Yeah, as Gayatri ma'am said multiple times.
So not that's part of the thing. That's right. So it is basically an entity that you can call and execute multiple times. One. Second would be, of course, routine means a block of code. So the function in a programming language is also a routine. Okay. A procedure in a programming language is also a routine. There are again technical differences between them, but any saved block of code is a routine. Think of it like that. And not only saved block of code, that is callable and executable multiple times. So any piece of code, think of it like that, can be one statement, can be even 100 statements, doesn't matter. That can be saved, that can be invoked again and again and executed multiple times, is known as a routine. And stored means it is saved somewhere. That means um, you can call it again and again. Even if you shut off the connection to the database server, it is still there, persistent. It doesn't go away, and you can invoke it once you reconnect to the database server. Okay. I'll show you exactly where it is stored. What are the different kinds of stored routines? I hope you are able to see the whiteboard now, right, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So stored routines. Typically, they are of two types. Stored procedures because of our session being cut short, I'm not writing it live. I'm showing you an existing whiteboard. So, and it's a preliminary discussion. We'll get into the hands-on anyways. Stored procedures and stored functions. There are two categories traditionally in SQL of stored routines. Stored procedures and stored functions. Trigger isn't a third category. It is a specialization of stored procedure. Think of it like that. So if anyone asks you what are the two kinds of stored routines, it's stored procedure and stored function. They are fundamentally a bit different. There are some common elements in between them, such as both of them are stored blocks of code, SQL commands, and both of them can be called multiple times. But both stored procedures and stored functions are used for different purposes in different situations and to solve different problems. We'll dive into what problems they solve individually later on. So two categories, stored procedures and stored functions. Trigger is a specialization of stored procedure. Okay. So to understand trigger, I'll have to tell you a bit about stored procedure. The easiest way to think of a stored procedure is to imagine a function in a programming language. So when be it any programming language, be it Python, C, Java, any programming language, when I talk about a function, what do you imagine? A piece of code or a block of code, right? Which you can call using function call statement, and you can pass arguments, and the function may or may not return value. Correct? That's a function. Similar concept when it comes to stored procedure, just one minor difference. Why is it called a procedure and not a function? The basic difference is a stored procedure essentially can't return a value. There is no concept of returning a value. You can have a block of code, you can make it do multiple things upon a single invocation. You can even pass parameters or arguments, but you cannot make it return something. You can make it return a value indirectly. That we will see when we go deeper into stored procedure. And what is the basic difference between stored procedure and triggers? Now, there are multiple differences, but just keep in mind two important things. First of all, the name trigger. What do you think it means? Why is it called a trigger? Anyone?
Sir, it may be the point of calling a function because it triggers that particular event to happen.
Bit correct, but I'll tell you the refined version of it. So triggers.
Whenever like
Yes.
on like either on commit or any specific thing, it will trigger that.
Not on commit, upon any DML operation.
Exactly. Commit. I gave it as an example. Like for any operation, it will trigger it whenever we will schedule it accordingly.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about it. Triggers fundamentally are auto invoked. A stored procedure or a stored function has to be manually invoked, right? So you have to call it. Just creating it is not enough. You can create stored procedure just like in Python, for example. You create a function, but just creating it is not enough. In order to use the function, you have to then call it, right? Same thing for stored procedure and stored function. You define them or declare them, and then you invoke them separately. These are two separate steps. But for a trigger, we just have to define or declare them. That's it. You attach it to events. Which events, what kind of triggers will come to that? You attach it to events and then they are auto invoked. For example, let's say you define a trigger, and while at the time of defining it, you specify that this trigger should be called whenever there is an update operation on my employees table. So whenever there will be an update statement which will be run on the employees table, the associated trigger or triggers, there can be in fact multiple triggers as well. With latest updates of MySQL, you can have more than one trigger associated to a single event. The all of those triggers will be automatically triggered or invoked when that update operation happens. So there is no direct way of calling a trigger. Once you declare a trigger, it is always auto invoked. So how do you call a trigger? Indirectly, by performing the associated DML operation. Is that clear? That's the fundamental difference between a trigger and any other thing like stored procedure, stored function, etc. And second difference is, of course, the application. Where is a trigger used? When you want certain actions, or you can call them side effects, in fact. When you want certain side effects to happen when a primary action is taking place. Like in my previous example, primary action was update. You are updating some data in the employee table. Someone is unmuted. A lot of background noise. Yeah. So primary action was the update, but the side effect will be whatever logic you write in the trigger. So when that update is happening, update will take place, but along with that, whatever else you want to happen will be defined in the trigger, and that will be taking place. To give you a real world analogy, let's say you are withdrawing cash from ATM. A cliched example, but an easy one to understand. Your primary action is withdrawal of cash, right? That's your primary intent. You want money from the ATM. Withdrawal of cash is what kind of CRUD operation in database? Let's
Update.
say you
Update.
correct update. You are reducing the account balance, so it's an update operation. That's the primary operation. That's your main thing. But along with that, let's say you will also do one or two other things. What are the one or two other things? First of all, an update, withdrawal, or deposit, or anything needs to be logged in the transactions table. When you next get a mini statement, it should appear in your transactions. So you need to log it into the transactions table. Correct? That's one side effect that you need to happen. And second side effect that you need to happen is, let's say, sending of SMS. A new log has to be let's say entered, or a new record has to be entered into the SMS to be sent, or pending SMS table. Let's say you are managing it through tables as well. So another entry will be made into that SMS table so that this SMS will be scheduled and sent to you. It doesn't have to be done immediately. It's a non-important operation. Even if the SMS gets skipped, it is fine. But do you think the logging of transactions is a non-important operation?
No, sir.
It's very important. If the transaction doesn't get logged, that's a data inconsistency, that's a discrepancy, violation of multiple compliances. So you basically should not allow your cash to be withdrawn if the transaction cannot be written into the transactions table because of any reason whatsoever. These two examples that I gave you, one important and one non-important side effect, is what we will see in the two types of triggers. So see, triggers, as I told you, I'm now coming deeper into triggers, are associated with events, right? What kind of events? DML operations. And how many DML operations do we have? We have insert, update, and delete. Three DML operations, right? So either you can define a trigger associated with insert event, or you can define a trigger associated with update event, or you can define a trigger associated with delete event. Now, for each event also, we can define a before and after trigger. Before and after trigger. Let me come to that. So this example that I gave you of a transaction, let me make it shorter. We will come to stored procedures and all in the next sessions. We'll first cover trigger. Yeah. So they are automatically invoked. So you have update, delete, insert, three kinds of triggers. And for each, we have two further subclasses, before and after. So there is a before update trigger, there is an after update trigger. There is a before delete and before insert and after insert trigger, right? Now, the before triggers are blocking in nature. What do you mean by blocking in nature? The example that I gave you of withdrawing cash, you are updating the account balance. So which is your target table? Accounts table, correct? Accounts table is your target table. I'm going to jot down these things over here for your reference. So let's say we have an accounts table. Just a second.
Sir,
Yes.
just to reconfirm, this triggers most like happens only on DML operations, right?
Yes. You
Okay.
cannot define triggers on any other operation, only purely DML operation. Okay.
Yes, sir, got it.
Yeah. So there are some database, having said that, some database vendors do allow you read triggers and other things, but that's non-standard SQL. Like it's a feature of the database vendor more than the feature of SQL. But across all database vendors, if you are using triggers, you will get these 6 standard triggers anyways. Clear? Okay. And
Sir,
trigger, yes.
one point. Any update, delete, or insert will require a commit at the end, no?
Not required. When you run a normal update statement, do you commit it?
But in normally, like in database, in production, we automate have to commit, no?
No, not required again, unless you're turning auto commit to off. It depends whether you are using a transaction or not. Unless you're using a
Okay.
transaction, technically you are right, because all the, by default, each DML operation is auto committed at the end of it, right? Every transaction by default consists of one DML operation. So technically it is correct, but then again, it depends on whether you are using transaction or not. It's not that you need to commit. If auto commit is on, it is automatically getting committed every single DML operation. Okay.
Actually, yeah, that's why in product when we used it for triggers. I mean, after commit only it was used to get invoked. So that is why I said that.
Mm. Okay, so accounts, let's say you have this accounts table. Now you have multiple records here. I will simulate one. So you have, let's say, bank account number 1. Let's say this belongs to ABC and account balance is 10,000 or 1,000, let's say 1,000 rupees, right? What you are trying to do over here is you are trying to run an update operation. Okay. You are trying to run an update operation. This whiteboard is very, very slow for some reason. Update, what you are trying to update exactly? You are trying to withdraw cash. Let's say you are trying to withdraw 3,000. Okay. From ATM. This is the update operation. Withdraw 3,000. Oh no, not 3,000. We do not even have that sort of balance. So withdraw 300, let's say. Or to follow Indian conventions, let's take denominations of 500. So withdraw 500 cash. So what should be ideally the case over here after this operation, right? My account balance should become 500. This should be my ideal case. But I have, when there are no side effects, let's say I will define 2 side effects. Okay. Side effect number 1 will be to create a new record. Okay. Create a new record or an entry, whatever you call it.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry to interrupt, but can you please use some dark color pen?
Okay, sure. Okay, so action number 1 will be to create a new record or create a new entry In which table? In transaction table. That's side effect number 1. In transactions. Now, what is side effect number 2? Let's say create a new or schedule a new SMS in transactions table. Okay, that's side effect number 1. Side effect number 2 is schedule a new SMS to be sent to notify the user of the transaction. Both of these are operations. You can define them in 2 separate triggers also. It can be done in one trigger, but logically you can define them in 2 separate triggers because these are 2 non-related operations. Now, out of these, right, we have discussed about 6 types of triggers. Which trigger should be applicable in which case? Let us see that. Okay, which trigger to be used in which case? The first one, okay, this one should be a before update trigger. Why before update? Can anyone guess? Why the first one will be a before update trigger?
We will lose
If
the
that is
information if we don't update.
if that is successful only, then we should go forward. Yeah, or in a way we will.
Yes,
Yeah.
before update means before the actual account balance is changed in the database, right? This operation will be performed, this creating a new entry into the transactions. So if for some reason the operation itself fails, you are not able to write into transactions table, the associated DML operation on the original table, that is accounts table, will also fail. And that is a desirable thing here. You want it to fail if you are not able to create a transaction. So you define it as a before update or as a blocking operation. This will block the transaction until this will block this change until this transaction has been written, which is a desirable thing. SMS to be sent can be defined as an after update, as an after update trigger. Why? Because even if this doesn't go through, it's fine. Even if you're not able to write a new log into SMS table or the SMS could not be sent, it's fine. Many times we also miss SMSs for our cash withdrawals, and that's completely okay because it's a non-critical operation. So you can define it as a non-blocking trigger. So this is the two use. That's why we have different kinds of trigger even for the same operation. Okay. Primarily one to be blocking in nature, one to be non-blocking in nature. I hope now it gives you a sense of why before and after triggers exist and what is the utility
Sir,
of both of them.
sir, so regarding the SMS part, being specific to the example you showed, so there are cases when we need to share the OTP also with SMS only. So won't it lead to wrong intuition that the OTP has been sent? Because sometimes there is a situation where a user tries to resend the OTP 3 times and then it gets logged for a couple of hours due to the restriction of not sending multiple OTPs. So in this case, this may disrupt the experience of a user.
By SMS, what I meant is your account was withdrawn by 5,000 rupees or 500 rupees, that kind of SMS. OTP SMS will obviously be a before update trigger. And anyways, you will not even trigger it at a database level in the first place. OTPs aren't getting generated through databases. They're getting generated through a third-party service. So it will be done at the API level, talking about application architecture. You won't even come to the update part until you have gotten that OTP confirmation. This
No, sir,
update of
but yeah, although we won't come to the database part for the OTP, but we have that track when to stop the user for time. So that also like that can get stored in the database if the user has tried multiple times or not.
that can be a simple status flag. User blocked temporary block or something like that. Doesn't have to be doesn't have to do anything with the trigger. That
Okay,
will be a simple logic where in your table, let's say user table, you have a column called temporary blocked status, and you have a timestamp associated with it, blocked until. Okay.
correct.
before even going or running this update statement from the backend, first you will check the status of this column, whether it is true or false. If it is true, you will check till how long, if the time has elapsed or not, right? If it has
Right.
elapsed, you won't even fire this update query from the backend itself. So it doesn't have to do anything with the database again.
Okay, got it.
Clear?
Sir, what if we have registered a transaction and our update gets failed?
Sorry, come again. Your voice is a bit muffled, Gitika.
Yeah, what I am saying is, what if we have registered a transaction and the actual query for trigger gets failed? So is there any relation
Yes,
in
for that, you will
common?
have to do, see, there are two ways to deal with this. First of all, in the body of the trigger, you can define error handlers. Okay. What error handlers do is they give you the same capability as exception handling in programming. You can then perform a reverse operation. So you have created a new entry in transaction. Let's say this failed. You will now delete this entry in transaction in the error handling logic. So you can define error handlers in triggers. And second is either you do that or through backend schedulers, you check for the data sanctity transactions. Let's say this failed, this trigger failed. Many database vendors, they anyways will undo this previous operation, but not all of them again, not all of them. So in that case, you will have a scheduler running every, let's say 2 seconds, which will check for the failed triggers. There is a log for failed triggers. In case this fails, you can then write a small script to undo the associated operation that was there. So you can
Okay.
undo the recent
Yes.
transaction both ways.
Seems
Error
fine.
handler, yeah, error handler is the better way. We'll come to that as well. Error handler can be used with stored procedures, with triggers, all of them. So we'll see error handling after we have covered stored procedures and stored routines in general. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this is an example of before and after. Similarly, we have before delete, after delete triggers, before insert, after insert triggers. So 6 basic kinds of triggers. You can classify them either as per DML operation, update, delete, or insert trigger, or as per the when they are occurring, before and after trigger. And in SQL in general, there are two other types of classification of, or one other type of classification of trigger, which is a row level trigger and a statement level trigger. MySQL only supports row level trigger. MySQL doesn't support statement level trigger. All triggers in MySQL are row level only, but certain database vendors like Oracle especially gives you the capability to define either row level or statement level trigger. Okay, what is a row level trigger? What is a statement level trigger? Very easy to understand. Let's say you are running a batch update, okay, on the same, let's say accounts table, okay. What you want to do is, let's say there was some natural calamity, some crisis, something, and the government decided, just like what US did during the time of COVID, it decided to give everyone some free funds, right? Let's say $1,000 or $2,000. Let's say Indian government tries to do the same thing, and each one is given, let's say 5,000 or 10,000 rupees, every citizen of the country below a certain income threshold. So it is a batch update. What you're going to do is run an update statement where you are increasing everyone's account balance by 5,000. Let's say you have 10 accounts, bank accounts in your bank. Okay. So this update statement will affect 10 rows, all 10 rows, or multiple rows at least. So you have defined a trigger that for every update, it will log a new transaction and it will send a new SMS. You have defined triggers. So row level trigger means it will get activated for each row getting affected. So how many times will this trigger get triggered? Basically 10 times. 10 rows are getting affected, so 10 times. But a statement level trigger only gets triggered once per DML statement being executed. You executed only one update statement, which affected 10 records. If it would have been a statement level trigger, how many times would it have run? It would have run only once. Only once. Practically, there is very little use outside of logging for a statement level trigger or outside of data versioning. So it's not supported by MySQL or generally by most application database vendors in general. Statement row level trigger is good enough. You guys got the difference between row level and statement level trigger?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, let's come into
Yes, sir.
the
I just had one quick question. Like
yeah,
I don't know how it would work, but like you said, statement level trigger would execute only for each, let's say, just one query, right?
right.
Yeah. So suppose a lot of rows are affected from that query. So when it is executed for that query, is like I don't know if it's possible or not. Just a question that pops. So for each row that is affected, do like is it standard or do they use it like to write for each row that is affected, or will use row level trigger only for that?
Instead of row level, what did you ask first?
I just asked if like for row level, each row that is updated, it is triggered, right? For
Yes,
statement level, you said ki one query, and for that, it would be triggered. So
right.
is it like just the query is successful, and for in that case it would be triggered, or if the query is successful for XYZ rows, then we can use the trigger for those rows. Is it like that?
It is like that in MySQL. Row level means for the number of rows getting affected, it will get triggered.
Correct.
Let's say
For
it
statement
failed.
level,
For statement level, it will just get triggered once, even if it is affecting any one row. It's fine.
okay. So it is just like okay, this was successful or unsuccessful, whatever it is. In that case, it would be triggered. What for whatever scenario we have written the trigger.
Correct, 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 correct.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now, let's discuss a few advantages and more importantly, disadvantages of trigger. You guys should keep that in mind. You can read comprehensively the MySQL documentation. It gets updated from time to time. There are several limitations, technical limitations of triggers as well. I'll tell you a few, but it does get changed. It keeps changing from version to version. First, the advantage is easy ones. You can schedule tasks based on events. You can define side effects that will get automatically invoked. It can be used for error handling as well. Like let's say with trigger, you want to log some errors, some update is taking place. You want to log whoever is trying to update. You want to log the username in a separate table for auditing. You can do that with triggers. No need to write another manual query or fire it from the backend. It can be heavily used for checking the validity of the data. Let's say you are trying to enter a phone number. Okay, at the time of creating, you have defined one of the things you should keep in mind about SQL vendors in general. You can define check constants and other such constants in the create table command, right? Remember, create table, you can write check constants in MySQL. Postgres especially supports check constants a lot. And then you can also define different other validation rules. But in most database vendors, those check constants only run during insert statements. For update, those check constants are not valid or respected. So how do you then still achieve the same data validation? Through before update triggers. Same functionality can be achieved by defining before update triggers. You can write the logic over there to check whether the phone number contains any alphabets or not, or whether the phone number is within a specified length or not, right? Or whether it is not empty. All of those things can be written in the trigger. If any of them is failing, the associated update operation will not take place because it is a before update trigger. If all of the conditions are passed, you allow that update to take place. So it can be used for data validation very heavily. But do know that every single trigger that you define slows down the associated DML operation a bit by a few milliseconds. So the more number of triggers you have on a table, in general, it's just like index. In general, the DML events will be a bit slower. The DML operations will be a bit slower because there is additional processing needed for the triggers, right? And time also needed for the same. Triggers can be also used for auditing, like I mentioned. So these are some general use cases and advantages. Disadvantages, triggers cannot support even simple validations like not null, unique key checks, foreign key constraints. You cannot use them inside triggers. So you cannot check for these things inside triggers. So they're limited. Triggers are quite difficult to troubleshoot. Although you can define error handlers in triggers, because you are not calling them explicitly, they get called in the background automatically, right? So any error that occurs in the trigger, think about it. Any error in the trigger because of the trigger actually doesn't bubble up, doesn't show up as a proper error message because trigger itself is getting invoked in the background. At best, it can get logged into the error logs of your database, but you won't see it in the console. if something is going wrong in the trigger. You will see maybe a failed message or an unrelated message. You won't get the details of the error. Like when you're running a select statement, you get somewhat specific details, right? Why that statement has failed or where the issue was. But in case of a trigger, if the trigger fails, you won't get that specificity. So it's difficult to troubleshoot. And the triggers, of course, increase the overhead. As I told you, all DML operations associated with triggers will become inherently a bit slower, right? And as I had mentioned a while ago, from MySQL 8 onwards, you can create multiple triggers for the same event on a single table. And when do they get called? In the order you have defined. So let's say you created trigger 1 first, then trigger 2, then trigger 3. So if you're firing that same event, let's say update event, trigger 1 will get called first, then trigger 2, then trigger 3, in the order that you have defined them. Okay. Now, what is the syntax of a trigger? This is the general syntax. I will also show you a code of the same. So it's create trigger. Generally, this is the syntax for all stored routines. Like the format is the same, little bit of change here and there. Okay. So the format is create the name of or the type of routine. So here it's a trigger. Create trigger. All stored routines have to be given a name. Same applies for trigger as well. So create trigger, just like create table, and then the name of the trigger. Okay, so give a name to the trigger. There is also a convention of naming triggers. How do you name triggers? Because triggers get stored, right, against tables. So it's a good idea to prefix the trigger name with the table name. Okay, for example, in our discussion, we were defining a trigger on accounts table, correct? Triggers are always associated with tables. They cannot exist independently. They have to be defined on a table. So create trigger, the name of the trigger can be accounts, the name of the table, then underscore what type of trigger it is. A trigger can be before or after, right? Type of trigger. So trigger, that means accounts underscore, let's say before underscore update. Accounts before update. And what is that trigger doing? Then the last word can be what the trigger is performing. So one of the operations was add transaction, right? So accounts underscore before update underscore add underscore transaction. Quite a detailed name, but that is a good way of naming triggers. You won't be ever confused in your logs while auditing triggers, while checking for triggers. You will never be confused on which table it is defined, what type of trigger it is, and what it is exactly doing. So you can get all of that info right from the name itself. Got it? So this is a general way of naming triggers. Then we have to specify whether it is before or after trigger. So before, and then the type of DML event it is defined on. So before update, let's say. Then on, after on, we define the table name on which the trigger is defined, because triggers, as I told, are always associated with tables. So on accounts, and then in MySQL, every trigger is a row level trigger. So you write for each row. There is no substitute for this. You always have to write for each row. Okay, for each row, and then the entire body of the trigger. Then the entire body of the trigger. This is the general syntax of a trigger. Clear? Then we'll come to old and new modifiers in a bit. First, let me show you a live example of a trigger. Then we'll come to the concept of old and new as well. What is old, what is new? Let me open VS Code. So far, things are clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me share my VS Code window now. Yeah, you guys can see it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So stored routines will come to triggers. Okay. Let's see this trigger. Yeah. While explaining this, I will explain the concept of new and old as well. Okay. First of all, a few things. Okay. Before we dive into the trigger, you have to change delimiter before defining any type of stored routine, be it trigger, be it stored procedure, or be it stored function. Okay. What is a delimiter? The default delimiter is semicolon, the symbol which ends your SQL statement. When we write any SQL query, we end it with a semicolon. That is the default delimiter. We have to change the default delimiter temporarily. Why? I will tell you that as well. Okay. Just know that first step is changing delimiter. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be 2 slashes. It can be any non-peculiar combination of character, like $2 or $3 actually, something which is non-standard or which wouldn't naturally occur in a query. So can be two slashes, $2, two hash, can be anything. Really doesn't matter. Okay. A
But
general
sir, it should be in combination only in a pair.
No, I can
Okay.
give it slash dollar. I told you, right? Anything
Okay.
that would typically occur in a query. So generally, it's a easy way to give two characters because a single dollar or a single slash can generally occur in a query naturally, but two slashes will not, right? Or
Yeah.
$2,
Yeah.
two hash will not. So this is the delimiter change. So you wait, let me connect it to org, right? It's running on, okay, I don't have the org database. Let it be, then I'll execute the next one. So delimiter, you change it to slash slash. Then what we are doing over here is the create trigger, as I told you. So create trigger, and then after that, after worker insert. Okay. So here I'm following a slightly different convention. The type of trigger after, the name of the table on which it is defined, which is worker, and then the operation, DML operation, insert. Okay. So after worker insert, then the type of trigger, which is after insert. Okay. On which table? On worker table. On worker table. And then, of course, for each row. For each row. This is standard syntax. Now, unlike programming languages, when SQL was created back in the days in 1970s, 80s, using curly brace for body was not really a convention. That was brought about by C language popularly. But using curly brace for a method or function body was not really popular back then. So people used different keywords to mark method bodies or function bodies. Here, that same convention is stuck through. So we use begin. It is the same as an opening curly brace in your C language or Java language, and end is same as a closing curly brace. So to mark the stored routine body, we use begin and end keyword. If your stored routine only contains one statement, right, it really can be skipped. Just like how in a normal function, if the function body has only one statement, you can skip the curly braces, right? Same concept here, but for the sake of syntax, just use it always. It will be good. If you want to add later on more statements, you can also do that without having to change the function a lot. The number of diffs will be less. So begin and end, and then we define the operation or operations. You can define multiple as well. You can even define error handlers. You can even declare variables. We can see really complex types of stored routines. We will come to that. For now, I've used a simple one. I have one operation which is being performed, which is for every row that is inserted into the worker table, I am creating a new row in the title table as well. Okay. Here, one more limitation of triggers I have to tell you. So this trigger is going to act on which table or going to activate when an operation is happening on which table?
Worker.
Worker.
Worker. Using the same trigger, you cannot perform another DML operation on the same table. So if you are trying to insert, update, or delete anything in worker table in the same trigger body, it will be a violation. You cannot do that. Okay. You can do anything in any other table using the trigger. It's okay. Right. You cannot do a write operation on the same table inside the trigger body. And it is only logical. Trigger means it is associated with a write operation. It is a after or before, whatever kind of trigger it is. That means an operation is happening. The table is locked. Worker table is locked currently, right? So you cannot perform another write operation at the same time on the same table. So you cannot write in the trigger body any write operation into the same table. It will give you a runtime error whenever you try to perform it.
Sir, cannot it run sequentially?
No, it cannot. It's simply prohibited by the SQL specifications. You cannot do anything on the same table. Okay, and the error message will not even tell you that. But the reason you will get an error is because you are trying to do something on the same table. Okay, so avoid writing any DML operation on the same table on which you have defined the trigger in the trigger body. You can read in most database vendors, you can write a select statement to read some data from the existing table. Got it? But then you will not be actually requiring it. I will show you why, because of new and old keyword. Okay. So basically what is this statement doing? It is inserting a new record into the title table. But what are the values of that new record? So if you see title table, it will have 3 columns: the worker, the ID, the description, of the or the title description of the new employee, and when was that employee record created or title created. Okay, so that record was created now, so the third value is now. The title is new joinee, this is a new employee, or you can say intern or new joinee, whatever it is. And this is the worker ID. Now worker ID will get created when you are creating the worker in the worker table. Think of it as an auto increment column. It will get created automatically. I need the same worker ID to be inserted into the title table. I can use this new keyword to do that. New.worker ID means it is referring to worker ID of the workers table or of the record. Let me show that to you with a bit of a description. So you are able to see the whiteboard now? Yes, there are two modifiers that you get access to with triggers. Okay, any kind of triggers. One is new, one is old. Okay, for example, let's go back to our same accounts operation. You are trying to update the account balance. Okay, update the account balance. So update means the previous balance was how much? 1000?
1000.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And the new balance after update is going to be how much?
500.
500.
Yeah. So old balance was 1000, new balance is 500. That is exactly what old and new keyword are. So this 1000 is the old dot account balance or old dot balance. And if I write new dot balance, it is going to be 500. Now, this old and new do not really depend on whether the operation has been performed or not. The query knows what is the old value and the query knows what will be the new value. The update operation that you are going to perform, it already knows what is the old value and what will be the new value. So if you write old dot balance at any point of time, it is referring to this 1000 value. Doesn't matter if the update has happened or hasn't happened. Old dot balance is always 1000 and new dot balance is always 500, the value that will be written. Okay. So now with this knowledge, come back to this query. So new dot worker ID means the worker ID that will be inserted or will be created. So let's say there are 5 workers. So you are creating the 6th one. So worker ID will be 6. So if you're using new dot worker ID in the trigger body, the value will automatically decompose to 6. Doesn't matter if the record is created or not created. If you use it in a before trigger or after trigger, new dot worker ID will always be 6, will always evaluate to 6. Okay. And now tell me a common sense thing. Do you think for an insert operation, there is any old dot worker ID?
No, sir, because we are entering the first time data.
Correct. First, fresh record, there is no old value for insert operation. Similarly, for new operation, which value is not there? Sorry, for delete operation, which value is not there?
New value.
New, correct. Because
Even
after
for
delete,
update, even for
for
update.
update, no, for update, old and new both are there.
Okay.
Because update is the only operation which has a before and an after, right? There is a value, you are updating it to something else, like we saw in the whiteboard, right? There was an existing value, 1000, you are updating it to 500. So old and new. Only for update, there are two, both old and new. For insert, there is no old. For delete, there is no new. Got it? Clear?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. So I have defined this trigger, and yes, what was the point of changing the delimiter? Let me tell you that. So inside this trigger body, I have ended the statement with a semicolon. I can have more than one SQL statement in a trigger or a stored procedure or a stored function. All of those statements will be ended with semicolon. But if I don't change the delimiter, what will happen is when I am trying to create this trigger, SQL will start processing from here, 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 here. When it will reach the semicolon, it will think that it is the end of the statement, end of the trigger, and it will try to create the trigger here only. But this is incomplete, so it will give you an error. That's the reason we change the default delimiter. We change the default delimiter so that SQL doesn't assume that the trigger ends here. The trigger actually ends here. Because now the delimiter isn't semicolon, it is 2 slashes. So the end of SQL statement will be here. That's the purpose of changing delimiter. So after your trigger body ends, you give the new delimiter, right? And you run this statement, so trigger is created, right? Then you can change the delimiter back to semicolon actually. You should actually change the delimiter back to semicolon, the default one. Okay. After that, how do you activate this trigger or invoke this trigger? By running. This is an after insert trigger. So you need to run an insert operation. So you run an insert operation into which table?
Sir, worker table.
Worker table.
Worker table only.
Correct. Insert into worker.
Sir,
See, these are the values.
just a
So
question here. Can I ask,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
Sir, so on line number 4, you gave an extra space between the two slashes. So will it
No, no,
affect?
no. No, no, no. That's actually auto formatting of VS Code. There is no extra space. When I'm
Okay,
saving
sir.
it
Got it, sir.
automatically.
But again, I just wanted to clarify if by mistake or by purpose you gave the space. So is that line that thing on line number 15 equivalent to
No,
on
no,
line number 4?
not equivalent. You have to give a space.
Okay, got it. And sir, just for me, can you just comment this line number 17?
Okay.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I just wanted to see that this come because in many programming practices, the double slash becomes an comment statement.
In
Got it.
SQL, that is not a comment. It's
Okay,
two lines.
got
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Huh. So this is the trigger. Now, when I run this insert, what will happen? Tell me. Two things will happen.
The
What?
first the entry will be done, and then after the entry is completed and success, then this trigger will be invoked, and that entry to the new title table will be done.
And what will be the record exactly? What values will it contain?
So record will be like values. First value will be 10, and then
Yes,
it will be
exactly.
new joinee, and then the timestamp current.
Correct. This will be 10 because I have given the ID of the new record as 10. So you guys got it? How triggers
Yes, sir.
are defined? Now let me show you one.
If we want to insert the other property, then we will again write new dot that property.
Yeah, you can use new dot anything. Yes. New dot, let's say first name, new dot last name, new dot salary, new dot what department, anything. New dot that means you can refer to the values of the incoming record. Got it? Old
So
dot means values of the existing record.
Sir, so this can affect with update one, right? Because in update, for example, I have a primary key that can and it is auto incremented, right? And if by mistake I just put the same ID as before, so in the before update query, it will insert the data into the trigger, but it won't insert there.
Correct. Yes, that is again a human error, right? You're
Sir,
mistakenly
but
giving.
yeah, but it we got deflected data, right? Again.
No. If you use new dot worker ID, it will refer to the ID that will be updated or will be created. Old dot worker ID will only take the existing ID.
No, sir, got it. I got it. But for example, I have entry still 10, right? And I need to fill an entry with ID starting like ID as 11. And I put 10 over there because I am working on a very large amount of data. So I by mistakenly uh, just put the previous data only. So even if I write new dot worker ID, then also, sir, it will take the value that I have provided, right?
Yes, correct.
So in this case, this will run into an error because it will get stored into this uh, title table, we can say. But when it will reach to the worker table, it will give an error at that moment.
Why will it give an error?
So because that particular primary key got duplicated, right?
Oh, you are saying duplicated. Then that's fine. In that case, you can either have an error handler or I think MySQL also rolls back this operation automatically. Turn
That's
that
why I
option off.
wanted to
Yeah, got it. Okay. And just like tables, databases, you can drop triggers as well. Okay. Some databases allow you to alter a trigger after it is defined or alter a stored procedure. Not all. So a standard practice is if you want to change something in an existing trigger or an existing stored procedure or stored function is to drop that altogether and create a fresh one with the changes. So that's a standard practice which works across all database vendors. Some do allow you to alter a trigger, existing trigger, but it would be good if you drop it all together and create a fresh trigger with the changes. If you want to change something in the logic here or add a new or one more statement here, then drop the existing trigger, create it afresh. Got it?
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Sir, what if we are using sequences? Will it still be able to refer the new
Uh,
ID?
your voice is muffled. Come again.
Sir, what if we are using sequence in insert command? So will it be able to refer the sequence?
Yes, yes. Auto increment, you mean, right, Gitika?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
will
It will
it
be
still
able
be
to.
able to refer in new dot worker ID, the new
Correct.
ID?
Correct.
Okay.
It will be able to
Okay.
refer.
Fine.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now I was coming to the other one. Yes, this is an after update trigger. Okay. Defined on same worker table, right? Which is updating the uh, for each row. Here I have skipped the begin and end because it is only one statement. See, so you can skip it. What is it doing? It is updating the title, right? Setting the ID to a new ID where the ID is old. So basically, what you are doing over here is think of it like this. I am updating the ID of an existing worker. I'm updating the ID of an existing worker. So the corresponding record in the title table has to be updated as well. Its ID also has to be updated. So instead of doing it manually through two different queries, I can define a trigger like this. So I've defined two triggers. One trigger whenever any new record will be created in the worker table, the corresponding record in the title table will be created. And this trigger, update trigger, will actually take care of updating of any worker ID in the worker table. So whenever a worker ID will be updated, the corresponding record in the title table, the ID of that record will also be updated. This is what it is doing. It shows use of both new and old. Okay. So when you are running this update, okay, let's say the existing worker ID is 10. When you created that record, then existing worker ID was 10. Okay. When you are updating, what will be the value of new dot worker ID and old dot worker ID?
So the new data that
New
we
would be
inserted,
100.
that
New
is
will be 100.
New would be 100. Yeah.
Yes. Old will be 10. Yes.
correct, sir.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. That's basically it. That is update. Now you guys can try out a few things. Let me give you an exercise on triggers. You can try out a few things just for your practice on triggers. Triggers have a lot more use with other concepts combined with other concepts as well in SQL that we will see later on once we are done with that. They are also used in data versioning. They're also used with data automated logging and all of that. For now, let's see this. And read a little bit about, I'm giving you a reading resource as well for self-study, a little bit about the other types of stored routines as well. Mm, and once your query optimization is done, also let me know. I have a few case studies on query optimization as well, and we'll do a session on that. And I'll give you a few things to practice on query optimization as well. Yeah, let me know when you guys can see my browser window. Let me reshare, I guess. Yeah, you're able to see this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is the reading material on stored routines. It will give you an idea on stored routines in MySQL. If you get time, you can go through this. And this is the primary exercise. It uses that same org database that I was showing to you guys. You have to create these three kinds of trigger: insert, update, and delete. The org database is available here in the GitHub repo. But not, I think this link is broken. Anyways, you can go to MySQL and you can go to resources, database dumps. Here, yeah, org is there. I will just modify the link then. Just a second. Let me modify.
Sir, also, sir, if I need to reach out to you regarding any doubt or something, so is there any mail ID or where I can reach out to you?
You can mail to our Futurance delivery. I am marked in that as well. I'll get it.
Acha, okay, great. Then it's okay.
And org, yeah, this is the database diagrams. Where was the database diagram? Refer to this diagram as well. Yeah, now it's updated. You don't have to refer anywhere. You can click the links here. So this is the primary task using the org database. And for additional practice, you can try out this scenario-based exercise. This uses the classic models database. Okay. This is additional. So it will give you a comprehensive practice with triggers. And the whiteboard is, I think, already available here in the repo. Notes, whiteboards. You can refer to stored routines. Yes. I will also upload the PDF version of this for easier viewing. This is currently an SVG image file. You can open it through Chrome or any browser for that matter. All right.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Clear about whatever we have discussed, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Sir.
Okay. Any other questions?
Not at the moment, sir.
Okay. And next Tuesday onwards, I think same timing or 7:15 types. So let us know in case you can't see the link, okay? Beforehand. By 7, you can check once in your LMS. If you're not able to find the link for any of the sessions, you can just let us know.
Yes, sure.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Some people are staying back. Any queries, guys? Vinod, Mayank, Sneha. Guys, please fill the feedback form as well and tell your peers as well to fill the feedback form for this session.